Your star does not give you life. It tolerates you. I have watched it do so for longer than your species has had eyes. And right now it is losing patience. One unlucky flare and every screen you trust goes dark. The dark is not the part you should fear. It is what the dark quietly takes with it. 4. In 1859, your sun did not flare. It cleared its throat. An astronomer named Carrington watched it begin. A sudden knot of white light flaring on the sun's face. A cloud of plasma weighing 1 billion tons had torn loose, and it crossed 93 million miles of vacuum in 17 hours. That crossing should take days. When it struck your magnetic field, the sky caught fire. Auroras that belonged to the frozen poles burned over Cuba, over Hawaii, over the Caribbean, so bright that people stood in the streets at midnight and read their newspapers by the glow. Others woke in the dead of night, saw the light, and started cooking breakfast, certain the morning had arrived. It had not. That was not dawn. That was a magnetic fist closing around your planet. Your highest technology then was a copper wire, the telegraph, your first crude nervous system. The storm drove raw currents straight into the ground, up into those wires, and the system turned on the people who built it. Operators were thrown from their chairs by the shock. The paper tape used to print messages burst into flame, and in some offices they pulled the batteries out completely, and the machines kept transmitting, running on the naked fury of the star itself. A species that loses its nerve when a video pauses to load once built a machine and watched the sun reach down and work the keys for it. In 1859, a few burning wires was a curiosity, a spectacle in a quiet world. But that was before you wrapped the entire planet in copper and silicon and called it civilization. The wire is no longer a novelty. It is the floor you're standing on. 3. You were taught that the magnetic field is a shield, a solid wall that keeps the sun out. It is not a wall, it is a membrane, and a membrane can be stretched. It can be peeled. A solar storm carries its own magnetic field. When that field points opposite to yours, the two do not push apart. They lock. They fuse in a violent process your scientists call reconnection. And the storm peels your shield open like skin off fruit. Then millions of amps pour down through the open seam into the rock beneath your cities. And under those cities, stitching your continents together, runs the high-voltage grid, millions of miles of it. The current climbs up into the lines and floods the transformers, the enormous machines that keep your lights breathing. They were never built to drink the sun directly. The copper cores heat. They swell. The insulation melts, the oil boils, and the metal fuses into a dead, silent slab. One fails, and it drags its neighbors down with it. The grid does not dim. It cascades, region by region, until a continent goes dark, faster than anyone can lift a phone to ask why. And in that dark, the water pumps stop. The dialysis machines stop. The ventilators and the incubators fall to their batteries, and the batteries do not last the night. I have watched the wired species do something tender. You strung 10,000 miles of cable across the dark sea floor, not for money, but because you could not bear to be a planet of strangers. You built the perfect antenna for your own undoing. When one transformer dies on an ordinary day, you replace it by lunch. But these are custom giants, hundreds of tons each, built to order over months, sometimes years. Burn thousands in a single hour across a continent, and there is no spare. There is no swap. There is only the dark, holding very still. And you do not have to wonder whether this can happen. It already has. You simply were not standing in the doorway when the round went past your head. 2. In July of 2012, your sun fired a coronal mass ejection that shamed almost everything in the modern record. It tore through the inner solar system at over 3,000 kilometers per second, and it carried the exact magnetic alignment needed to crack your shield wide open. A Carrington-class storm. Possibly worse, it crossed your orbit dead center, and it hit nothing. Because Earth had rolled through that precise point on its path 9 days earlier. You missed total annihilation by 9 days of empty road. 9 days. The width of a held breath. On the scale of a star. Had it struck, the induced currents would have liquefied transformer cores across North America and Europe in a single afternoon. Fuel refineries cold. Every supply chain, And they all run on software now, frozen solid overnight. Modern population density, 18th century power. Your own analyst put the price near $2 trillion, and the recovery at up to a decade. I checked the orbital arithmetic 4 times. The fourth was not for accuracy, it was disbelief. You stepped off the curb, 1 heartbeat after the freight train passed, and never felt the wind move. But dodging a bullet does not unload the gun. Your sun is at the violent crest of its 11-year cycle right now, the loudest stretch it has, and these near misses are crowding closer together. And still, the grid is not the part that should frighten you. What should frighten you is what happens to your memory. 1. Look at the glass in your hand. Everything you are now lives inside it. Your money, your records, your history, the proof that you exist to every system that counts. You picture all of it floating in a cloud, weightless, untouchable. It is not a cloud, it is glass and copper, dragged across the crushing black floor of your oceans. The fiber itself is glass. It does not conduct. It does not fear the storm. But light fades over distance. So every 50 miles along the seabed sits a copper-fed repeater, sipping a constant current to push the signal onward. When a Carrington event lands, the ocean itself becomes the conductor. The seafloor goes live. The surge forces its way into the cables and burns the repeaters out, one after another. The glass survives. The light inside it dies. This is not a forecast. I have watched stars clear their throats before and stood in the quiet afterward on worlds that wrote down everything they ever were, then could not read a single word of it. The libraries were still full. The minds inside them no longer knew who they had been. A civilization does not need to burn to end. It only needs to forget. If the repeaters fail, the continents fall silent in the same instant. North America cannot reach Europe. Asia is severed from the West. The satellites that tell your machines what time it is would drift and fall silent. The financial system, built on trade's time to the millionth of a second across those oceans, does not slow down. It stops. Trillions in digital wealth evaporate, sealed inside servers that can no longer prove the money was ever there. You are the species that stretched its entire nervous system across the seabed and trusted the sky to stay quiet forever. You traded every ounce of resilience for speed, and the sky has never made you that promise. 1859 was not a freak. 2012 was not mercy. They were rhythm. Your sun is a churning engine of twisting magnetic rope, and the tension is winding up again, deep in a layer you will never see. You believe you have stepped into a permanent age of light, that the dark is behind you for good. But you stand in a brightly lit room, and a hand you cannot see is already reaching for the switch. Deep in that churning layer, the next flare is taking shape. The rope is beginning to snap. We are only waiting for the room to go quiet.